Today on the Bass Channel, we're talking EQ pedals. Now, you've probably seen these, you may even have one. There's plenty of different uses, but today I'm going to talk about 3 that you might not have thought of. So the things I'm going to talk about today can be achieved with just about any graphic EQ, possibly even parametric EQ, but we're going to focus on graphic EQ. And because the sponsor of today's video is Sonic Cake, I'm going to be using the Tone Group. The Tone Group is a professional, true bypass, 10-band graphic equalizer with an analog circuit design. It features 10 selected frequency bands based on the classic EQ effect pedal for a variety of instruments, allowing you to precisely and quickly shape your tone with the sliders. So the first use I want to talk about with EQ pedals that you might not have thought of, it's something that has become a little bit near and dear to me lately because I've been making my own, but if you have a DI pedal or a preamp pedal or something that does not have the capability for cab sims, you can kind of approximate the response of a cabinet and microphone using the EQ. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of stuff with cab sims recently, so I've been seeing and looking and noticing how most of the EQ curves are similar-ish, but they also have their own little characters in certain mid-frequencies. And because this has 10 bands, we can, like I said, approximate. You might need 100 bands to accurately capture an SVT 810 into a Beta 52 or your favorite cab and your favorite mic, but we can get close enough with something like this. Number 2, something again that I like a lot, is overdrive. Now, the problem with some overdrives is they might sound great in the upper frequencies or the mid frequencies, but they happen to dip out the low end. Now, the other problem that I have going the opposite way in something like an SVT VR or similar is that the low end is usually the first thing to hit the amp, therefore it's the first thing to get overdriven, the first thing to distort, and it just kind of gives it a muddy, just not pleasant to my ear sound. So the magic with the EQ pedal is that you can choose which frequencies you want to hit first, whether that be 500 hertz, 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, whichever it might be. So I typically like kind of that upper mid-range, 1000 hertz, 2000 hertz, or kilohertz. Either way, in that window, sometimes 500 can be cool, but either way, I don't want to push 100, 125, even 60. I don't want to push those too hard into the front end of something, especially if it has a tube with its own natural kind of tube drive. That's just not for me. Now, if it's for you, obviously you can do that here too, but I've dialed in a couple sounds that really emphasize the upper mid-range with a de-emphasis on the low end. Because in a bass guitar, the biggest natural fundamental frequency usually occurs in the low end, whether that's 80 hertz, 100 hertz, 250 hertz, somewhere in that window. If you just run a clean boost pedal, it's going to push those in first. So what I want to do is I want to bring those low frequencies down and raise the upper mid frequencies so those hit first, and then by the time the low end hits, it's approximately unity gain. So you're still getting a good amount of low end response, but only the upper mids are overdriving. That was a really long explanation to talk about what's going on. Here's what it sounds like. And the third and final use for an EQ pedal that you might not have thought of is helping one bass sound a little bit closer to another bass. Now, I know what you're thinking, why wouldn't you just play the other bass? If I have a P bass and I need it to sound like my jazz bass, why wouldn't I just bring my jazz bass? Well, maybe you don't have the option to, who knows? You're limited to one bass and you need it to sound a little bit like another bass for a different song. The time that this kind of came in handy for me is when we did the Megadeth medley collaboration cover, this one right here. And in that video, we used 2 different basses. We had a 5-string PJ and a 4-string Gibson with EMG active soap bars. Actually, it was that one right there. Now, I particularly like the sound of an active soap bar. The way that I play really suits it, but unfortunately, the way that Josh plays doesn't quite suit it. So what I did in that video, or for that video, is using some clever EQ, I dipped out a couple frequencies that weren't working in that bass with the way Josh attacks. So it could be a little bit more consistent with when he went to the 5-string, it wasn't a dramatic jump in tonal response. So the way we're going to do that today is use a Gibson Grabber and a Gibson G3 that kind of on one hand are the same bass, and on another hand they are completely different. So I'm going to analyze the frequency of the G3, I'm going to mimic that or match that in the EQ pedal, and I'm going to apply it to the Grabber. So again, this is a not often thought of method for using EQ, but you never know when it might come in handy for you. Maybe you only brought one bass and you need it to sound a little different for this song. So those are my top 3 uses for EQ that you may or may not have thought of. Again, big thanks to Sonic Cake for sponsoring this video with the tone group. I was able to get some pretty decent sounds, and it only runs at 9 volts rather than 18 like some other competitors do. So if you're in the market for an EQ, you might want to give this one a look. And of course, let me know down below in the comments the way that you use EQ. Obviously, they're very handy for solving resonant problem frequencies in a room, and there's all sorts of uses. So let me know down below how you use one. Again, if you like this video, like. If you hated it, dislike. Make sure you subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and become a member if you want some more exclusive and extended content. I think I've said just about all there is to say for today, so be safe, and I'll see you next time.